Hey everybody, TacticAngel back on the PlayStation 5 to take a look at another premium ship in World Warships Legends. This time we'll be looking at the Achilles, a Tier 6 premium pan-European destroyer. For this review, I'll start with the history of the Achilles, then we'll go into an overview with the ship and her stats, and finish off with some gameplay. If you want to skip around at all, you should see some time codes in the description to help you out. So, the history for the Achilles is a bit sus. But this is what I've been able to gather from my sources at Wargaming. I'm not a very semi-famous community contributor for nothing, so I could have some contacts at Wargaming. Keep this on the lowdown, but what I hear is a few years back, one of the guys from the art department that normally does good work got rip-roaring drunk and ended up meeting someone in a bar. No. This isn't how you think it's gonna go. Because what I hear happened is that they drank a bunch and hung out, which I get, and this guy that he had met spun this big yarn about how he had recently traveled back in time from the future in hopes of recruiting talented naval cadets to help Earth struggle against robots invading from the Outer Rim. But apparently his jump was just a few years off, and now the quarter is all but worthless. I don't know, something about the loss of Malevelon Creek. And then, as mysteriously as he appeared, this stranger got into a space car and drove away. And I guess this all happened on Halloween, so maybe the costume makes a little bit more sense. Anyway, apparently this Wargaming employee managed to sneak into the game this particular ship. I guess they're going to bring the people with the highest base XP into the future to help with the war? Now, I'm not sure why a ship named Achilles is placed into this game as a Swedish ship, because admittedly, when you think of the most famous Swedish individuals, maybe it's hard to picture them saying Achilles, but then again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I just don't know enough Swedish people, but I think it has something to do with the design of the ship, and of course the Swedish being leaders in flat pack technology. As for the name Achilles though, I guess it was actually the name of this mysterious time traveler. Kind of a strange name today, but you never know. And while I personally find this hard to believe, apparently he was named after some ancient Greek warrior, a man who ran around with a hammer so he could hit people on the back of their foot, apparently really hard. This all happened during something called the Trojan War, and apparently after the Greeks had won all the prophylactics, he went on a trip to the capital of France or something and got stabbed to death? I don't know. This sounds a little bit off actually. Is somebody screwing around with Wikipedia when I'm trying to make a review? Whatever, it's probably good enough. So anyway, that is definitely the mostly true history of the future super destroyer ship Achilles, I guess. So beneath its interesting paint job, even the art department rolls a 1 sometimes, I guess, Achilles is based on an Öland and shares most of the stats with that ship. That makes her something of a known quantity and maybe one of the better deals as far as getting a ship for little or no money, depending on how much time you really want to put into the seasonal event. So to start with, I'm going to assume that some of you have seen my Öland review, so all of this will be a bit condensed. The ship this is based off is a top shelf knife fighter at the tier. It benefits from having 2 heels and is certainly one of the most well-defended destroyers against attacks from air. But on the other hand, she has no smoke, and combined with the Öland's unimpressive speed, that makes playing her a bit more difficult. Achilles doesn't change that much on this ship. Probably the thing that stands out most is that you come in with an additional heal. That makes Achilles' survivability even that much better than Öland by very nearly 2000 HP right out of the box. She also has an additional 5 knots of speed and can use that to basically outrun every ship she can face except for a few French and Russian DDs. That makes the odd arrangement of consumables somewhat more tolerable because at least you can run away, but you do still end up with those heals, an engine boost, and DFAA. There's no smoke to allow you to temporarily bail out of most engagements. And while Achilles is not a bad ship by any stretch of the imagination, in terms of a gunboat destroyer, she has a slower reload, and you're really more of an above average candidate rather than excellent here. And it may be unfair to call it a con, because you're still pretty good, but you just can't hang in there with dedicated gunboats if you just want to slug it out. That tends to leave Achilles feeling very similar, very familiar to those who've played Öland, and with a few tweaks that definitely make her feel a bit more of an opportunist. If you can't straight up win knife fights with just about every destroyer out there, you're gonna have to dodge and weave, move in and out of engagements with them, and capitalize on your improved HP recovery. That's not a straight up downside. Achilles, still being one of the few destroyers that doesn't get a smoke screen, means that oftentimes you have to disengage in Öland anyway. While you're not nearly as good as starting fires and getting damage over time, sailing around effortlessly above 40 knots is going to help you a lot in terms of cap control. And that ultimately means that, like Öland, this ship will be favored by the brave, the talented, and measured destroyer player captains out there who pick their battles, but who might prefer the map control aspect of the game to the more slow-paced brawler that Öland certainly can be. Looking at commanders wouldn't be a lot of use. I will say two things. Everything that I said in the Öland review applies to this ship. The major differences between this and Öland is Swirsky's abilities are more or less useful depending on whether you want to try to make up that gap between you and really good gunboats, or if you want to accept your place in the pecking order and focus on other things. The other half of that is that anything that increases your speed is even more hilarious in this, because you have more speed to work with, everything is percentage based, and percentages times percentages is exactly what your high school teacher was trying to tell you about compound interest. Though from the staggering amounts of oil I've seen some folks contribute to their fleets, it is also potentially a lesson that you've already learned from credit card debt. As we look at stats, I'm going to think about the community as two different groups, those who have played the Öland and those who haven't, so where it matters, expect to hear comparisons to both. Similar to Öland, Achilles starts with 14,100 hit points, about 600 less than your average tier 6 destroyer. I don't really know how to say this in a concise fashion, but having below average hit points might mean a bit more to Achilles than it does to Öland, since ships with low HP pools tend to be a little bit min-max in either the gunboat or torpedo boat direction, and Achilles is really more of an all-arounder. Anyway, its armor is unremarkable, 6 to 20 millimeters, so don't plan on bouncing or shattering anything uncommon, and just like Öland, you do have a trick that will help you later. Looking at the main battery, Achilles has the same 2x2 arrangement of 120mm guns. You'll be looking at 1700 HE damage with a 7% fire chance. 2150 for AP, and those are exactly the same damage numbers on Öland, but there are two notable differences here. You lose 300 meters of range versus Öland, and considering your tier placement, this may as well be stated as using your guns against something like a Bismarck is 300 meters worse of an idea than usual. You also have a 3-second reload rather than 2.5. That means 16% less DPM than Öland, and for every 6 fires you might have set in Öland, expect to set just 5 on Achilles. It's not exactly the end of the world. Öland is basically top of the heap in terms of DPM, and a very good fire starter for a destroyer at the tier. Achilles can only say that it is an above average student. If you consider Swedish ships to be best played with a focus on torpedoes, the Achilles is no different than Öland. She has just 2 launchers with 3 torpedoes each. They're long-reaching at 12 kilometers and travel at a blazing 76 knots. Damage is low, just 10,700, and with a 1.6 kilometer detection range, which is a bit high, the speed will still make those a bit harder to dodge than average. They also fire like other pan-European destroyers, as either narrow or very narrow spreads. They reload quickly, and the general theory behind how you use these is that you either try to apply a flood so that someone can start a fire on that target, or the other way around, and then damage over time is the name of the game. As we look at AA, your 52 rating here is about twice that of the average destroyer, and more importantly, you have about double the DPM. Your main battery counts for almost half of the DPM, and also functions as your long-range AA. At a full 5 kilometers, it will be wise to occasionally turn this off if you don't want to be bothered by the CV. And while you may have good AA for destroyer standards, always remember that the fun police still have the advantage on you. In any case, you add another 67 damage per second at 3.5 and 2.5 kilometers, meaning all of your damage has decent range, and overall you should expect that most CVs will want to pick on you less than other destroyers. The maneuverability on Achilles is just blazing fast. She's faster than the stock Öland with her engine boost active, and ranks a full 2.7 knots faster than the average destroyer at the tier. In ranking, this is the 4th fastest destroyer at tier 6. Somehow, in spite of all of this extra speed, you've got the same tight 610 meter turning circle, so expect some drift, and you have a very responsive rudder at just 3.4 seconds. Concealment on Achilles is fairly average, 100 meters better than most destroyers by air and by sea. If you find somebody else's smoke screen, that advantage goes up to 200 meters while firing from smoke, but don't expect that that happens very often. Like other pan-European destroyers, you don't have a smokescreen. What you do have is your standard destroyer damage control party. You have a speed boost, which is again a standard 8%, but it's 8% of an already excellent speed. Then you have 3 heals, and that's interesting because Öland gets just the 2, giving you 1 additional opportunity to disengage, lick your wounds, and then keep fighting. That's particularly nice in a game with a carrier because they do tend to pick on you even though you do have good AA. But to fight those, you always do have at least 2 charges of this handy dandy DFAA. It's not going to make this thing the kind of FU that the Friesling can be, but you can definitely take a few planes down per attack run, which at least makes you a less desirable target than other destroyers.
And now for something completely different.
That's right, gameplay. So we're going to be on trap. We got about 3 seconds before the game starts, and we're going to go ahead and roll out towards the right. This is just a minor preference based on this particular map draw and being center spawn. We're the only destroyer, and if it seems like I'm paying a lot of attention to the screen, it's because this is the first day of the update, and I am, I don't know, shocked, aghast, panicking, maybe, at the target that has been drawn on the back of my back? The back of my back. TacticAngel, you silver-tongued devil. So we'll go ahead and put our commander up on the screen. You can see with Stig Hansen Eriksson, we are a torpedo boy, and we are going to do torpedo things. We don't have a whole lot going in terms of the guns, just kind of that first slot choice to try to hit things a little bit more often. Other than that, we're just going to be stealthy, we're going to be fast, and we're going to be distributing fish. You can see we're already up to 42.5 knots, and that is something that the original Öland can only do downhill. In any case, we're almost to sea because of just how quick we actually are. You can see immediately our advantage in terms of spotting. And we are going to kind of move in such a direction that maybe we don't get hit by the second set of torpedoes. Hopefully he hasn't launched those as well. Those are wide spreads as far as Europe is concerned, I guess. Much like the width of streets and parking spaces, they are somewhat less spacious in their nature than American parking spaces. We do land 1 torpedo hit, and for a second we did look at the mini-map. That was because we were kind of wondering if anybody else could see us if we tried to blind fire them. We determined no, and then fired a bunch, and kind of looks like all we're going to do is miss all of our shots. So we're going to stop doing that. We get the cap, activate some DFAA just to see if we can't make this a little bit more pricey than not at all. We do walk away with a couple of planes, but it's not all that many. You might have good AA for a destroyer. You do not have good AA, period. So, important to note that. With that cap done, I'm going to head towards B, because I am one of those people who like to run around the map and try to get all the caps. I never played Pokemon, but I guess it's kind of the same deal. Now, we are next to a Le Foudre. The Le Foudre is a Jean Bart at its heart, except that it has a very silly camo on it that I cannot see. I can, however, see that our Le Foudre has somehow taken a ridiculous amount of damage and is now sailing into a torpedo.
Engine damage.
Being next to a Lafudra and also being a pretty good AA candidate myself, I would expect that most carrier players would choose not to come after me, but then again, he could be looking at that fancy CC thing in front of my name. Oh boy, I mean, I even said that I wasn't going to run the CC patch or the CC flag, and now I've got this CC tag in front of my name. And it's just, I feel like it's causing people to do this to me. Though, in all honesty, your job as a carrier player is usually to make the destroyers on the enemy team have a bad game. I'm the only destroyer on his enemy team, so I guess he's kind of doing what he's supposed to do. We dodge another set of torpedoes, that one with a little bit more breathing room than the last. And we're watching these aeroplanes. This could go really, really poorly for the New Orleans. It doesn't. Now I will add my AA to his and hopefully make him pay a little bit for that. But I'm not going to be able to save him from the damage caused by all the other ships that can see him as he sails into the middle of the map. Looking back at this, I don't think I consciously made the decision to drive towards the flank that has 7 ships on it, but that is what we're doing. That said, you can see as we're launching out some torpedoes out at the Flandre, we've got really, really nice speed on those. We're going to be able to get a couple of hits, probably. And one of the things that the Öland really kind of excels at, and the Achilles as well, is being pretty friendly to player aim. It's not going to take 30 seconds or a minute for my torpedoes to get to 7 or 8 kilometers. We'll take 30 seconds to get all the way out there, but he's towards the maximum part of my range. I will briefly mention that the carrier is doing me a favor by pre-dropping most of his torpedo bombers, because in this case he can probably get at least 2 runs off of me. So now we are going to make sure that the enemy aircraft carrier doesn't have any planes over us, because if he spots the torpedoes immediately, they're going to be spotted the entire way until they hit their targets or miss their targets. So we don't want to give away the secret, even though it's not really a secret. In this case, it looks like the Flandre has completely dodged everything, and that's a bit sad. Looking at the scoreboard, we've got a couple of observations, one of which is that we're currently ahead on points, and we're slowly increasing that point lead. The other is that we are definitely losing on ships. And the losing on ships thing is going to become a problem in terms of the point situation, because I don't think anybody can realistically defend B. I put a couple of I put all of my torpedoes out there to see if I can't get some hits, maybe some decaps.
Engine boost activated.
I am a bit disappointed in myself that I overlaid them as much as I did, because that's kind of an all or nothing torpedo spread, with each one of those kind of pairing up with the other set. But whatever. We get an opportunity to use our guns without drawing a lot of attention as we go behind this island. Get some decaps that is going to save us just a little bit of time. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but when I looked slightly to my right, the other cruiser was 10.6 kilometers away from me. That would ordinarily be in range for me to shoot my guns as the Öland. So, right on the edge of making a difference here, if we were actually in the other premium version of this ship, we might have actually been able to decap him as well. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make in terms of the overall game, but it's a curiosity at the very least.
Enemy cruiser detected.
We continue to spam our torpedo button, and Flandre, not quite sure if he's going to hit any of those. Really, I was thinking I'd like to hit the Queen Elizabeth in the back. Maybe? Yeah. That was totally a thing that I meant to do. No, just a target-rich environment.
Engine boost deactivated.
We're going to make a couple of sad Achilles noises, because Bismarck is the ship that's hanging out in the cap. That's a little bit sad because, of course, I can't get that close to Bismarck, and I can't do that much to Bismarck. Having no smoke screen is a real drag in some cases, and against those German battleships that tend to have a lot of secondaries, it's maybe not advisable to pick a fight with them.
We sank their battleship.
But we do well enough against the Hood. That's kind of awkward talking about the both of them back to back. But anywho, we're still up by quite a bit. It's 4-4, but it's not feeling great. You can see they're holding the middle. We've got kind of the outside. Now we're down to a 40-point gap. And I'm still probably not going to be able to actually cap this base. So I kind of need the Bismarck to sail out of the other side of this cap before I can even contest. But curious, there's a fighter squadron over here. I suppose you could say it isn't that curious. I was open to the possibility, but it does appear as though the enemy carrier has driven behind this island. Very, very useful island. It's hard to shoot through it. But for a second, we're going to go ahead and turn our AA off so that he doesn't have time to line up a shot as we're driving towards him. Then we're going to turn the AA back on as he spots us and give him everything we got. Yeah, I don't think that's going to hit. Obviously, very, very nice maneuverability. You still have speed, and for whatever reason, this thing just accelerates, decelerates, turns, does all the things just like you want it to. Swing that booty around and dodge again. Graf Zeppelin is not the best thing to run up on in a destroyer, but we've got most of our hit points.
Engine damage.
Now I am going to reflexively drive in front of him, and that is mostly because, well, he's turning too, but also if I'm in front of him, usually ships don't have as much secondaries that can fire directly forward, so it's usually a slightly safer place to be. I don't know that I've ever actually run up on a Graf Zeppelin before this, but those 88s on its deck clearly can shoot at me still. They might be 105s. It really doesn't matter. They're gonna pen me.
Engine boost activated.
But as we get towards that 20 seconds before we're unspotted, we managed to wrestle the game back from that point deficit, snatch the victory, and that's pretty much what the Achilles is all about. Though in this case you didn't get to see me struggle against something like a Benson, but I would probably suggest not fighting them. Not in a fair fight anyway. So that brings us to the closing thoughts on Achilles. First of all, I hope, probably in vain, that everybody realizes this review is a joke. I don't post many 3K games or hire for ships that you have to pay for. Is Achilles good? Yeah, she's fine. I happen to really like Öland, but it's not a ship for everyone. I think most of the trades that Achilles makes are interesting, and as long as I don't have to look at the camo, it can be just another ship that's fun to play in Standard. I think the guns are still good enough that the trade-off between survivability, DPM, and speed is attractive to some folks. I also see where fearless knife fighters will probably find this less entertaining. I prefer to run around as a torpedo boat in both of these and see how it shakes out with the already good guns. This one I just have to be a little bit more careful. In a way, this can kind of work better if your whole purpose is just hanging in there, but it will be slightly worse if I do manage to get outgunned and can't get away. I do love the speed, and I tend to play domination games with an almost blind craving for base captures. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but I wasn't using any flags in this game. So this only gets faster and more ridiculous. If you need smoke in order to play a destroyer, this ship's not going to be for you, but that should probably be obvious at this point. Anyway, happy April Fools, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.